Cut the Rope is one of the most successful games in the industry, but from endless sequels to relentless cash grabs, here is the downfall of a mobile gaming icon. ZeptoLab, the studio behind Cut the Rope, only existed for a short time before everything changed. It was founded around 2008 or 2009 by twin brothers Semyon and Efim Voinov in Moscow. The name Zepto comes from a metric prefix that represents 1 sextillion, an almost impossibly small number meant to reflect how tiny their operation was at the start. Their journey started when they were around 8 or 9, after their parents gave them a ZX Spectrum computer and they immediately began making games on it. Semyon created space simulators and titles inspired by Predator, while Efim built global strategy games similar to Civilization. That childhood obsession never really faded. Through the 2000s, they kept building games across new platforms, from Palm PDAs to early mobile phones, sharpening the programming and design skills that would eventually define their studio. Years later, those skills led to ZeptoLab's first commercial release, Parachute Ninja, launched in February 2010. During development, Efim experimented with the rope-swinging mechanic for the ninja character, powered by a physics engine the team had built themselves. On paper, it worked really well. The players found the controls confusing and unintuitive. Even friends and family testing the game often had no idea what they were supposed to do. Realizing the mechanic was hurting the experience, ZeptoLab removed the rope system from Parachute Ninja and replaced it with a simpler parachute feature. But even though it failed in that game, the technology behind it was too good to throw away, so instead of discarding it, they built an entirely new game where cutting ropes became the core idea. And that failed mechanic is what eventually turned into Cut the Rope. Cut the Rope. At first, the concept was just a simple physics puzzle. Move an object from point A to point B by cutting ropes in the right order. But the idea truly clicked when they added a character waiting at the end, and suddenly, the mechanic had purpose. That character became Omnom. According to Semyon, the creature came from a dream in which he saw a little green monster with huge eyes happily munching on candy. He immediately thought it would make a perfect video game character, and so, the brothers split the work naturally. Efim focused on the rope physics and technical systems, while Semyon handled the art direction, character design, and playful identity of the game. They started realizing something was working almost immediately. In one prototype test, Efim shared in an interview that they knew they were on the right path because, according to him, one of my friends who had never played games before got his hands on the prototype and didn't return my iPhone until he had collected all the stars. The final game asked players to feed candy to Omnom by slicing ropes at the right moment, using timing and momentum to guide it into his mouth. Each level also featured 3 floating stars for players willing to take riskier routes and chase perfect scores. As new mechanics like bubbles, air cushions, teleporters, and hazards were introduced, the puzzle stayed fresh without losing their simplicity. That's why Cut the Rope became the perfect mobile game for 2010. By 2010, it wasn't just popular, it was already one of the most awarded games of its time. In 2011, it won the BAFTA for Best Handheld Game, becoming the first iOS title to ever do it, and Guinness World Records later recognized that milestone. That same year, Apple awarded it an Apple Design Award at WWDC, recognizing how naturally it used the iPhone's touchscreen. It also won Best Handheld Game at the 11th Annual Game Developers Choice Awards, a ceremony voted on by fellow developers. That same year, when Red Dead Redemption won Game of the Year and Minecraft took Best Debut, Cut the Rope was still right there alongside them. On mobile-specific platforms, it dominated the 2011 Pocket Gamer Awards, winning Best iPhone Casual or Puzzle Game, Most Innovative iPhone Game, and overall Game of the Year across all mobile devices. Not to mention, it reached 1 million downloads in just 9 days after release, making it one of the fastest-seeking iOS games at the time. Cut the Rope had become a phenomenon almost overnight, and ZeptoLab suddenly found itself in the position every indie studio dreams of. Semyon Voinov said as much in an early interview when asked what was next for the company. He said they were positively surprised and very excited by the love players were showing Cut the Rope, and wanted to repay that support with new levels, updates, and additional features. He explained that ZeptoLab would spend the coming months supporting the game with updates and possible ports to other platforms. At the same time, he said they did not want to be stuck doing updates forever, and planned to begin work on their next game as soon as possible. Back then, it just sounded like ambition, but looking at it now, it feels like the start of something very different. And that's where things started to change, because the sequels came quickly. First was Cut the Rope Holiday Gift in December 2010, a small seasonal spin-off released when the original game was still exploding in popularity. It was less of a true sequel, and more of an early sign that ZeptoLab understood the value of keeping the brand constantly visible. Next came Cut the Rope Experiments in August 2011. This entry introduced a professor, a new character who guided players through fresh mechanics like suction cups and other gadgets. It still felt close to the original formula, offering genuine new ideas rather than simply recycling levels.
Interesting.
Then, in April 2013, they released Cut the Rope Time Travel, which pushed the concept in a new direction. The gimmick here was feeding two Omnoms at once, each dressed for different historical eras. It was creative, and definitely a fresh concept for the franchise, but also a sign that the series was leaning harder into themes and novelty. Later that same year arrived Cut the Rope 2, the first numbered sequel and the biggest release since the original. It introduced the Namis, helper characters that changed how puzzles worked and expanded the gameplay, including Roto with a propeller, Lick with a long tongue, Blue the cube-shaped one, Toss who could launch objects, and Boo, the bomb-like character. This was also where the franchise's greed became more visible, with power-ups and monetization systems starting to show up in a way players couldn't ignore. Players complained that Cut the Rope 2 had moved away from the simple pay-once design of the original and toward the usual mobile tactics. As one Reddit rant put it, "Why are all devs getting so greedy? Now it's time-limited play. You get a certain number of energy. Each retry takes 1 energy. Once those resources ran out, the player either had to wait for a refill or spend money." The post became even more infamous when it highlighted ZeptoLab's own response. According to the user, the studio suggested you can obtain unlimited power supply if your Omnom is wearing a crown. That crown reportedly cost 10,000 in-game coins, which translated to around $16 in purchased currency. For perspective, the original Cut the Rope built its reputation as a cheap, premium mobile game that cost around 99 cents. Asking players to spend 16 times that amount just to remove an annoyance many felt should not exist in the first place felt excessive to a lot of players at the time. $16 could buy Minecraft Pocket Edition for $6.99, and still leave enough money for roughly 9 other classic 99-cent mobile games like Plants vs. Zombies or Angry Birds Star Wars. Supporting that backlash, one App Store review under the game complained that the sequel was being bombarded every 2 to 3 levels with ads, before eventually offering the legendary pop-up to play ad-free and a bundle of power-ups for $2.99. Alongside that, the game also introduced a life system called Sunshine, meaning once attempts ran out, players had to wait or pay. After this shift, ZeptoLab went and began to branch far outside the usual puzzle formula. Cut the Rope Triple Threat in 2014 bundled earlier games for the Nintendo 3DS, an attempt to bring the mobile hit onto dedicated handheld hardware. Also in 2014 came My Omnom, which turned the candy-loving mascot into a virtual pet. And instead of solving puzzles, players cared for Omnom in a style similar to Poe or Tamagotchi. It was focused more on expanding the character into another profitable genre than on changing gameplay. Then, in December 2015, Cut the Rope magic brought the series back to its puzzle roots. Omnom could transform into different creatures like birds or a mouse, creating new solutions and mechanics. By 2017, Omnom Bubbles arrived, which was an arcade bubble shooter clearly designed around casual, retention-focused mobile habits. The rope-cutting identity was becoming less important than keeping Omnom active in app stores. Then, in 2019, came Omnom Merge, following the merge game trend where players combined creatures and objects to progress, kind of like an oversimplified version of the game 2048. In 2020, Omnom Run transformed the series into a 3D endless runner, chasing the popularity of games like Subway Surfers and Temple Run. At this point, the original identity of Cut the Rope is barely recognizable. A year later, Cut the Rope Remastered launched on Apple Arcade. It reworked classic levels in 3D and removed ads and in-app purchases. Ironically, one of the cleanest modern versions of the franchise was locked behind a subscription service. At this point, Cut the Rope Blast, a match-style puzzle game inspired by titles like Toon Blast. Once again, the franchise was following proven mobile game formulas rather than setting them. In 2023, Cut the Rope Daily released through Netflix Games, offering one puzzle per day in a format clearly built around daily engagement streaks, very similar to Wordle. Later that year, Cut the Rope 3 arrived as the new flagship release in Apple Arcade, continuing that shift. This time, the focus shifted to Nibblenom, the child of Omnom and Omnell, another addition as the franchise kept expanding its cast. By this point, the numbers alone were becoming absurd. Cut the Rope had ballooned into more than a dozen releases across puzzle games, runners, merge games, bubble shooters, virtual pets, remasters, subscription exclusives, and daily login apps. For most franchises, that would be decades of output, and Cut the Rope did it while chasing trends almost every few years. But the spin-offs were only one part of how far this was about to go. ZeptoLab was trying to turn Omnom into a global mascot, something closer to Hello Kitty or Mickey Mouse than just a mobile game character, pushing him into merchandise and branding deals to keep him everywhere. The merchandise push behind that was massive. ZeptoLab signed licensing deals to get Omnom onto as many shelves as possible, and plush toys became some of the biggest sellers, with people still buying them even in 2026. Mattel even released Activity toys with their physical Omnom figures with conductive bases that could interact directly with a game on an iPad screen. Then fast food promotions followed. In 2013, Burger King included Cut the Rope toys and King Jr. meals, complete with codes for exclusive in-game levels, which essentially turned children's meals into user acquisition campaigns. Omnom also appeared in clothing, pajamas, backpacks, lunchboxes, and school supplies sold through their own store. In Canada, he was even used to promote popcorn buckets through a deal with Colonel's Popcorn. And it didn't stop at physical products either, because digital content came next. ZeptoLab had made Omnom Stories, and it had become a long-running animated web series that eventually grew to dozens of seasons and hundreds of episodes. By 2026, the main YouTube channel had accumulated millions of subscribers and billions of views, creating a steady stream of ad revenue long after the original game's peak had faded. The brand also moved into books and comics. Ape Entertainment produced comic stories expanding Omnom's world, while personalized children's books let parents place their own child into adventures alongside the character. They even tried turning Omnom into a movie star. In 2015, ZeptoLab announced Omnom the Movie, planned as an origin story about a boy discovering the creature inside a mysterious box, but the project quietly fell into development hell and the production company behind it later went inactive. And at this point, it started to feel seriously excessive. Omnom was being pushed toward becoming something closer to a Mario-level entertainment icon than just a puzzle game mascot. The scale of the push is desperate, because Cut the Rope had already started from a position most studios would kill for: massive popularity, critical acclaim, and global recognition. Yet ZeptoLab still treated it like something that needed to be stretched, and fans definitely started to notice it. When players looked at what Cut the Rope had become, the reaction was rarely excitement. One user, reacting to the franchise's modern subscription model, wrote, "Holy crap, £10 for a month of Cut the Rope? I feel like I originally bought the game for $1 on my old iTouch. Wowzers." That sentiment came up often, the contrast between a cheap, beloved classic and a franchise now asking for recurring payments. Another player put it even more bluntly: "I remember when I purchased the game back in 2012. Sad what has happened to the game. £10 a month? Are they serious?" That frustration with monetization was not limited to pricing alone. Other App Store reviews pointed to the day-to-day experience itself, with one former player saying the game used to be one of my favorite App Store games, but now features ads every 3 levels, making it feel barely playable. Another review echoed the same issue from a different angle, explaining they even bought a premium subscription for their kids, yet the game still keeps giving me ads and repeatedly prompts them to upgrade again despite already paying. One longtime player said they had supported the series since 2011, played ZeptoLab's other games, and even gone back to fully complete every Cut the Rope title. But when ZeptoLab announced in December 2020 2021 that Omnom would be getting NFTs, they said it was the very last straw that finally broke the camel's back. They reflected on all the time they had spent with the franchise, all that swiping my finger across the screen to get those 3 stars. I sacrificed way too many hours of my time to play these games to 100% completion. And then came the betrayal. This is how ZeptoLab repays my hard work, with overpriced, environment-damaging digital art. Ultimately, that says a lot about the kind of company ZeptoLab has become. Players were willing to stay through sequels, spin-offs, subscriptions, merchandise, endless reinventions, and years of slow decline. But once the franchise began chasing every monetization trend imaginable, even NFTs, some fans could no longer ignore what Cut the Rope had become: desperate and greedy.